Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Yacht Crew Blogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and today I am pleased to welcome Captain Justin Crowther. How are you?
Very good, thank you. All the better to be back at home, I think.
I can imagine. Now, for those of you that don't know who Captain Justin is, let me tell you, he has been featured on quite a few news stories as of late as being one of the most recent boats in a string of attacks in the Strait of Gibraltar by orcas or killer whales. Now, these mammals, they're part of the dolphin family, actually. And when you say dolphin family, you think lovely creatures, and generally speaking, they are. They are well known to play with boats, not necessarily come anywhere near them, but they're very curious creatures, as it were. It is very, very unusual for them not only to attack, but to continue an attack in a long, drawn out, sustained attack. And that is actually exactly what happened in your case. And this isn't the first. The first was about mid-July in the Strait of Gibraltar. So what happened with you?
Um, well, let's first just say I use the word attack because it was the word that was used by the SEMA specialists. I was unusually upset, I suppose, by the amount of people that seem to be offended by the use of the word in attack. But I suppose if you look up the word and find out its meanings in the dictionary, that's exactly what SEMA said it was. We've been working for Halcyon Yachts. I've been working for them for about a year and a half now, and my job has been delivering boats all over the world. I've done a couple of Pacific ones from Canada to Mexico, from Vanuatu to Tahiti last year, lots in the Mediterranean. This is my 5th Biscay crossing this year, so I've been busy right through lockdown. So it was kind of not unusual for me to be around whales and dolphins. In fact, most of the time we see them on the trips. I would never say I would get bored of them, but I'm no longer as excited as it used to be because it's such a regular occurrence. Killer whales are another thing. I'm very aware of the pod that inhabit the area around Gibraltar. And I understand, I've been into Barbate, where they have the catch nets, the catch systems down there, and they've been since Phoenician times catching tuna, as well as I've been almost caught up in the nets on the Tunisian side, which run miles out to shore, from the shore. So I'm learning more as we go, and I'm no expert. I'm really no expert. I'm a captain and a delivery skipper. So we were coming up from Tenerife. It was a boat that was owned by 2 English doctors, and it's an old Halberg Rassi, and they're known. It's a Swedish-built boat, very, very strongly built. In fact, overbuilt, and let's call them a bit of a tank because that's what they are. They're a bit slow and they really don't like going into the wind. So it was a wet ride, a difficult wet ride. I had, when we were attacked, 2 very cool Finnish crew, and Halcyon always provide me with amazing crew. They are often, very, very experienced sailors, often doctors or heads of business. These 2 guys are sound engineers from Finland. They live in the island where they make Swan yachts and Baltic yachts. And their father worked for Swan, and they work as sound engineers in Stockholm. They've been there for 10 years. They've been working on some of the biggest rock concerts in Scandinavia. But of course, since March, there's been no work. So they wanted to get some more ocean experience, not untypical of the kind of crew I have. Super laid back, super calm. So during the attacks, there was no stress on the boat whatsoever. So we'd been coming up from Tenerife. We had some problems. We had to pull into Vigo for some engineering work. And from Vigo, we came up around Finisterre in quite bad conditions. It was typical conditions. You nearly always have strong northerlies coming around the coast, and this was no exception. So we were seeing 4.7s at least, and when we got significantly past Finisterre, we were getting into 4.8s, and it was quite unpleasant. We decided to make it in towards Coruna to try and get away from the winds, and we were intending originally to continue to go straight out into Biscay. But I thought with the weather forecast, with lightning winds, we needed to take on more fuel just to be sure and safe. So we did that. We came into Coruna the following morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, touch and go really. We just fueled and went. So by The 12 o'clock watch, we were very tired. We were doing 3-hour watches. The autopilot had failed on the way up from Tenerife, so now we've been hand steering for days on end, and it was tiring. So I was on watch between 12 and 3, about 1:30 in the afternoon. I had the wheel partially locked. It has a locking system on it. So that means that it's much easier to hand steer. You can do it with one hand. So yeah, it was just ripped out my hand basically. We were going along into about a 4-7. We were motor sailing. We had one reef in the main, and we were making about 20 degrees to the wind because we were motor sailing, which is pretty much taking me where I wanted to go. We knew we had about 12 hours of bashing into the wind, if you like, in order that we would get into better winds. So we were motoring not particularly hard. It was 1800 revs, and we were making about 4 or 5 knots, 2-meter seas, so it was slowing the boat down significantly. A lot of noise down below, of course, as we're crashing into the waves. The first I knew of it was exactly when the wheel got ripped out my hand, and of course the first thing in my head is, damn, the autopilot's playing up again. So I tried to control it from the head unit in the cockpit, 4 or 5 times, switching it on and off, playing with the bearing adjustment and this sort of thing, but there was no life out of it whatsoever. And it was 7 times or so that the wheel got knocked out of my hands. By now I was obviously standing up with both hands on the wheel, and just ripped out my hands. There was no way I could hold the wheel. So at that point I called my crew, and they were on deck almost instantly. Michael took the wheel. I went down with Johannes. We ripped open the master cabin underneath it to see if we could see any problems or any damage. We tried looking over the side of the boat, couldn't see anything wrong with the steering. And we shut the power down. We killed the master battery controllers. We disconnected all of the wiring. We killed the engine. But just before we did kill the engine, Michael shouted up from the wheel, "Orca!" So I ran up the companionway, grabbed my camera, and the footage that's kind of gone viral on the internet, that's what I caught. All you see is an orca swimming away from the back of the boat. That's all I caught. Up until that point, I had absolutely no warning of it. It was there. I had no idea. I was looking around. I looked over the side of the boat. No sign it was there whatsoever. All I knew is the wheel was out of control. So when we knew it was an orca, I shouted at that point to Johannes, "Kill the engine." We stopped everything. We turned everything off, and we sat there kind of dead in the water, I suppose. We had the mainsail still up with the reef in it, but we had no control on the boat. It had knocked us around and round in circles. If you look at the track on our navionics, it looks like a straight line at first, but when you zoom into it, you can see it. We made at least 4 full circles with the boat, and now we had absolutely no way, as we were set up, of controlling the boat. We do have an emergency steering on the boat. I considered that for about 1 second. It means that you have to steer from down below with someone up in the cockpit with the hatch open. In those conditions, forget it. My job is really to get the boat there quickly and safely. So if it means being towed, that's part of safely, and that was my first thought. So then we called the Coast Guard on Channel 16 several times, no response at all. I later found out that quite a few other vessels heard my call, so it wasn't a problem with the radio. We tried with the main set, and then with the handhelds, nothing at all. A French racing trimaran came within half a mile of us, and I wanted to attract his attention to warn him about the situation. He wasn't answering on the VHF. We had AIS on, so other boats could spot us as well. We shot a flare towards the sky above the French guy, but nothing whatsoever. Possibly typical of a solar sailor. He might be napping or sleeping, so flares I know are not that effective in these situations. I then phoned Halcyon, and Pete, the owner of Halcyon, took the call. He always answers 24 hours a day, and I explained the situation. I think he was a bit shocked, quite frankly. You know, we've been attacked by killer whales. It's not the sort of thing you hear every day, is it, really?
So at this stage, you had actually realized that it was as a result of the killer whale that
Absolutely,
this
100%.
situation occurred.
Without
Was
question.
there only one, or was there more?
I only saw one. I mean, it was funny. We were talking about it. We were aware of the incident involving the Spanish naval vessel. There was a racing vessel coming into a regatta while we were in Bayona, and that was severely damaged on its rudder again by the killer whales, and it was all over the Galician press, and we saw that, and we were joking about it. What would we do if it happened to us? Funny enough, who would have thunk it, right? Anyway. So, yeah, at this stage, I phoned to Pete and I said, no, we've got severe damage. We've broken our steering quadrant because we'd ripped open the bed. We saw that. It was split in two, basically. The whole shaft had gone. And I was particularly afraid that we would lose our rudder if we tried to steer. I just didn't want to do it. I thought that would drop out and then we would have a big hole in the boat. And that's never good at sea, really. So better we went for a tow, and at least if we did have significant problems, a towboat would have been able to assist better than jumping into a life raft with orcas swimming around. Not cool, right? So yeah, so we got Pete to call. So he relayed the message to the Spanish Coast Guard via Falmouth Coast Guard, and guess what? They answered. So then they called me up, and I tried calling them, but my Spanish is bad, so it's their country and accept that, but they didn't speak any English either. They're just no comprende. But even though I can speak some pidgin Spanish, there was no communication possible there. Shortly after the conversation with Pete, I thought, you know what, I'm going to press the DSC button. That's what it's there for, and I'm going to put an all ships out. And it was a security. It wasn't a mayday. We were not sinking. We were drifting away from the coast, so no major danger. We could have hand steered if we wanted to, and we could have set up sails and the boat to be able to help us. So it was no panic. We were all very calm on board. So we waited quite a long time. I mean, that communication failure took, I suppose, about half an hour of our time. We, of course, put the kettle on, had a nice cup of tea during that process, and then yeah, well, they came out with a big Salvamento boat, and as you know, those Salvamento boats are very capable. I think it was coming out over 28 knots from Coruna in very difficult conditions, and got to us very quickly. I suppose just over an hour, something like that. And bearing in mind we were over 30 miles away from Coruna, about 5 miles off the coast, something like this. Depth of water about 150 meters, and from my time, I had a boat in Florida for 5 years in Aventura. I did a lot of sports fishing in the Bahamas and Florida. And what I know is that sort of 150 meter contour is a typical tuna belt where they like to come in. Funny old thing, yeah. So I think that might have some bearing on the fact. Anyway, yeah. So the Salvamento guys took a tow on us, and it was a really difficult tow. We fortunately had put our tender upside down on the foredeck, and fortunately, because that became a seat, because the tow lines there, it's steel bridle, and we had to hook them over our forward cleats, and they kept on coming off. And being on 2 to 3 meter seas with a boat with no steerage, being side onto it and rolling all over the place, we put our mainsail away because they requested, but then we had no stability at all. So it was a bit bouncy, let's say, on the bows, and I had to stand on the bridle to stop it coming off the cleats. I considered lashing it on, but then it would have been a case of having to get it off in a rapid hurry. That would be a problem too. So I decided that would probably be the least stupid option, really. They took a tow. We were with these waves coming in from the east-northeast, now right behind us, so we were surfing, and I suppose we were a dead weight of about 14 tons, and we were kind of surfing, so we got them to pick up the tow speed until such point that we stopped surfing, and that was about 8 or 9 knots, which is clearly faster than our hull speed. We towed for about half an hour, first of all, without any real incidents. It was, pretty hairy on the foredeck. We had no control of our direction, but it was okay. And then the guys I told them to, obviously take some footage of it for future, for posterity. And yeah, they were sitting in the cockpit, all fairly calm, and then we started to be pushed sideways. At first, I thought we were surfing. I asked them to increase the tow speed again. We were now over 10 knots with the towboat and it was getting pretty hairy. We were literally being pushed sideways, tripping off the waves. The boat was then stopping. The tow line would go completely slack and then snatch. And after about 10-15 minutes of doing this, the guys realized it was the orcas. They were pushing us again. They'd come without any warning. We didn't see them anywhere near the boat. They were coming in all over the boat and pushing it, trying to lift it out the water, just playing with it like a bath toy, basically. I was holding on quite tightly, I can tell you. I was going underwater completely as we were breaking off these waves. And eventually, after about 10-15 minutes of this, I can't quite be sure because I had other things on my mind, the tow line broke. It's a steel cable, and it snapped under my feet. So we still had part of the bridle on, which I released. I got rid of it. I just chucked it off. We came to a kind of drifting stop. We, again, had no sails up, so we were drifting at about 2 or 3 knots. They called the Salvamento as it was happening. We later found out that the Salvamento guys at this time had seen them, what they were doing, and they were breaching in front of them as well. So they weren't aware of any hits, but they said it was really hard to know because there was so much noise going on with their engines, with the tow and everything. They said they could well have been hit, but they were certainly breaching in front of them. So that was the second hit, and I think I guess that was quite a sharp awakening. We sat there sort of dead in the water for 10 or 15 minutes, and the guys came back round and put another tow on us with a new bridle, and we then towed for another 2.5 hours with me standing on the bows without further incident. As we got closer into shore, the conditions got better and calmer, and it was in the end they dropped us into the marina just inside Coruna. When we arrived, it was about 6:30 in the evening by now, and there was quite a lot of attention already. The people had obviously been listening to the VHF communications between the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard was now putting out all ships alerts, and we had heard these from the previous incident with the Spanish Navy. I mean, everyone in the area, if they weren't aware of it, they should have been aware of it, because there were lots of, on Navtex, there were lots of warnings and stuff like this going out. What to do about it, though? I mean, what do you do? I think everyone's still trying to form a strategy to what you should do. We were also visited by CIMA, which are the Spanish organization which have been pretty key. They're not the only organization, but they're one of the key organizations that have been trying to understand what's going on here. And they spent 2 or 3 hours with us. There were a number of journalists there waiting to talk to us too. So we had quite a long time before we managed to get in and get a shower and stuff like that, about 10:30 at night, and then we just had a meal and went to bed. Next morning, CIMA asked permission to come and inspect the boat, and of course we were very keen to understand what the hell was going on ourselves. So the thought of having some free divers on the boat was a great thing, and they were meticulous. They spent 2 hours measuring and filming all underneath the boat, and then another hour asking us questions, and it was quite nice to kind of get that out, and it kind of puts everything into perspective when they told us this was the 15th attack at the time that had happened this year. Out of all of the attacks, some of them had lasted an awful lot longer than we'd suffered, and the boats had been at least an hour being played with, but it seems to be a common theme that when you kill everything, you turn all your electrics off, turn your power off, and basically play dead, eventually they seem to leave you alone. And it's twice they did it when we did it, so they're kind of getting a picture. What the most shocking thing was when the diver, one of the divers came out of the water, and one of the first things he said when he took his regulator out, he said, "You are lucky, guys." That was his words. So it kind of, ooh. It was then it dawned on us that we probably were quite lucky. We had suffered some significant damage to the rudder, and excuse me for a second, we'd suffered some significant damage to the rudder, and we had teeth marks all over the boat, which was quite something. I wasn't expecting that. And it wasn't just on the keel. Sorry, it wasn't just on the rudder. It was on the keel, on the bulb of the keel, and on the bow. And one of the CIMA guys explained that the teeth marks on the bow were particularly concerning because it was a twisting action. So they were trying to turn the boat over, basically. They were trying to trip it up and turn it over. By the looks, that's what they assumed from the marks. They were even on the side of the boat, on the starboard side, just near the waterline. So they were trying to knock us off course or something like this. Again, you know, people can speculate on this, and I don't know. I'm just telling you what these guys have told me, and I can see the damage to the boat. And the SEMA guys just did not want to give an opinion, but they offered some possible theories, and I guess that's the right way to say it, because I don't think we'll ever really know. But like you say, it may be coming back down to problems of overfishing in the Gibraltar Straits, the tuna fish coming up north, the fact that boats have been on lockdown, so very few leisure boats have been around this year, and all of a sudden the water's now full again, and who knows? You know, you can speculate.
Well, I mean, our history shows that the fishermen as well aren't very kind to the orcas in that area. You know, we've seen both in the Pacific Northwest and the Strait of Gibraltar, the orca population is now endangered. Now, these animals, they think very much like humans, I should say mammals, but they think very much like humans. They have fear, they have the emotions that we have, they have the thought processes that we have. And if you think about it, you know, these animals that for the longest time thought, you know, humans were an interesting thing, but yet all of a sudden humans they're having trouble raising their babies. Their babies aren't actually making it to adulthood because they can't feed them appropriately. And orcas and killer whales, they tend to have a diet that they stick to. They're not the kind that will change their diet midstream. They don't really adapt that well. Once their family has a certain diet, they stick with that diet. So now that the tuna is being overfished and they're being attacked for that tuna, who knows? You know, maybe they're just saying, look, we have self-preservation in us as well. They may not mean harm, because in the past we've never seen action like this. I mean, historically, we have never seen killer whales act this way.
Yeah, no, it's quite right. I mean, there's all sorts of information coming in which would support that argument. I understand it's the first time in 30 years they've been catching bluefin tuna up in Norway again. It's historically they used to have them. They've been overfished. They've not been there. They've been seen in Falmouth Harbour this year. Big bluefin tuna. There was one washed ashore on Hayling Island in the south coast of the UK. You know, pretty much full size one. The climate change, the water temperatures. There's all sorts of things that are throwing into this that we are screwing up our planet, and maybe, you know, who knows, add one and one together and you get this situation. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you definitely are very, very lucky to have made it through that, especially if they were trying to toss your boat.
Yeah, it seems so. I mean, as I said, I think the biggest concern for me and what I would like to take from all of this is, you know, I'm a professional delivery skipper, and as I say, I've been working with Halcyon for now a year and a half. We've got, you know, really good crew coming in from Halcyon, but these guys never expected this. It might well put them off ever traveling on the ocean again. They're Baltic sailors and they wanted to pick up some ocean experience. I don't think that's the case. You know, I think they probably will learn and grow from it. What do we have to do about our behavior on the boat? I mean, he is a professional skipper. I know I was speaking to one of the other Halcyon crews, and what they've decided to do is either stay way inshore, like on the 10-meter contour, or go way offshore in the 1,000, 2,000 meters. They're going to stay out of these depths where these orcas seem to play, and they're staying away from where they know they are. So one of the crews jumped straight out from Bayona, straight out northwest out into the Atlantic. They're coming back to the UK. They didn't want to come anywhere near Coruna where they know these attacks have been happening. Ironically, I flew back last night, and during the daytime we learnt SEMA guys have sent me some emails. There were 3 fresh attacks yesterday. 3 fresh attacks. One of them, a French crew at midnight, were disabled very close to Coruna. Another Italian crew, I understand, was attacked, and there was a 3rd vessel also attacked. All 3 of them were disabled, basically, in the same kind of way that we were. So it's more and more frequent as well. So I think we have to do something about leisure boats being in their territory right now until we really understand what's going on. I think we need to think, not go there, you know, stay away from it. The boats stay in port until we've got at least some, you know, verification, because it seems common. I haven't heard so far it's motorboats they're attacking. It's sailboats. Something's going on here, isn't there? I don't know what it is. Sailboats, they may be an easy target for them. You know, they're a different profile, completely different shape. The rudder system is often, you know, very much pronounced. I don't know. Who knows? You know, it could be something to do with the echo sound of also aggravating them. It might be affecting them. I've heard in Tongue of the Ocean in the Bahamas, there are a number of whales found killed from the US Navy operations where they're using very strong sonar. This sort of thing. Who knows? Who knows?
Well, I mean, I think the lesson here is that this is their playground. It's not ours. This is their home. This is where they live, breed, feed. Their existence relies upon this area, and ours doesn't. So I think, you know, in cases like this, until there is an answer found and a safe passage found, that you are right, the best thing to do is leave them in their natural habitat and leave them alone.
I mean, it's a concern that this pod, according to SEMA, it seems to be the same group of around 7 individuals with 2 potentially young adolescents. And one of the theories they offered was that they think that these 2 young males might be practicing their kill technique. And it kind of rings true. You know, we were hit, as all of the other boats appear to have been hit without warning. And they come in from distance, they come in extremely hard and fast. They go for the rudder system, they try to lift the boat out of the water, they spin it out of control, and they only seem to stop playing like this or attacking like this when the boat is basically stops moving. And the common thing I'm hearing from the other captains, and SEMA said this too, is stop doing everything you're doing. And I think that's probably the kindest thing, the best thing to do. I've heard some other ways of dealing with it, and I just will not repeat them. I think we are in their environment, and we should respect that.
Yeah, well, you know, I've seen there's a couple of threads on Facebook where people are giving their opinions, and yeah, there are some people that obviously don't love the sea as much as you do, or I do, for that matter, and don't give it, you know, the respect it deserves, and those that live within the ocean, the respect that it deserves. You know, we're seeing these animals become endangered, and we really do have to take a little bit more time and have a little bit more patience and a little bit more understanding, because I think if your family was threatened, you would be reacting in much the same way.
That's absolutely right, and I think that's exactly the right way to view it. Like I say, it's for me the biggest concern right now is the lighter built boats. You know, we all know of a number of boats, and I won't name them, that have had some structural failures in the last few years, and it's enough to say that I've always been a little wary about skippering on those boats. I try to avoid them. I need a bigger boat, basically.
Well, I mean, one thing that some of the other reports have stated is that they were communicating because they have their own language, and they could hear that communication going on. That wasn't the case with you. There was no communication, and you only saw the one.
No, I'm still trying to fathom out whether or not all the other boats were running engines. I saw some debate about color of anti-foul. Well, it doesn't seem to have any bearing. According to SEMA, we had black anti-foul, one boat had white anti-foul, another had red. The orcas were seen to going away with red anti-foul on their heads. I don't think that's got a bearing on it. The engine, however, I think it's a common theme. We were certainly running the engine, and it's a little noisy down below when we are. And we were also bashing into 2 to 3 meter seas, so a lot of noise down below. We have very thick hull. Maybe we were just not able to hear it, and I think that was the case. I'll be very surprised if there was no communication from them, because generally that's the way, and often on boats I will hear the communication between them, even if they're not attacking. You can certainly hear dolphins, pilot whales, this sort of thing, often on the boats underwater.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, from what I understand, they are very coordinated when they do their attacks and when they are on hunt. They literally, like you would, I would imagine, you know, if you're on a hunt yourself on land, they communicate, they make sure that each other knows where they are, and they plan an attack. So I can imagine it would be the same in this situation.
Yeah, and we didn't hear anything. It was one of the things that SEMA wanted to know about for sure, if we heard this communication, but not at all, unfortunately. We did get some good footage a little later on while we were under tow. That's not been released yet on the internet as far as I'm aware, but I'm happy to share that with you. It's quite interesting footage, and it really is with them just swimming at the side of the boat. But while I was kind of trying to fathom out what we should do with this tow line, because I saw it was taking huge stresses. Probably just about the point we dropped the tow line, one of the orcas made its presence very much aware, came right alongside me, and like the dolphins often do when they're sitting around the bow of the boat, looked me straight in the eye. And it was kind of a chilling moment, I have to tell you. Yeah? It's not uncommon. When anyone who's been around dolphins will tell you this, you're on the bow of the boat and they often turn sideways and look you straight in the eye. Yeah?
He was telling you something, I guess.
He was. I mean, there's one of the interesting, conspiracy theories, if you like, is that maybe they're trying to tell us one of the orcas is injured and they need our help. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah?
Well, I mean, it's nice to know that there is a group out there that is going to be going and taking a look at these orcas and doing a bit of a study and seeing what is going on, because I think that's really important. In the meantime, until they know what is causing these attacks and how to avoid them, what would your suggestion be to anybody that is thinking of going in that area?
Go sail in the South Pacific. It's much nicer.
And much safer at the moment.
No, in all seriousness, I think I've mentioned it already more than once. By turning your engine off for sure, turning your electronics off, bearing in mind possibly your echo sounder or your depth finder is giving some pulse that they don't like or is attracting them, and not touching a rudder. This is certainly something we discussed with SEMA. It seems as soon as they've disabled the rudder and people stop trying to turn it or can't turn it, at that point they seem to lose interest. It's no longer a target for them. So yeah, just play dead basically, and try to stop all movement. And I've heard that it can take quite a time. It can take over an hour. And how do you know if they're around when they're kind of under the surface and they're not showing themselves? It's really tough, especially at night. But the other thing, quite clearly, the crews that have avoided the area, we've had when we were in the area, we had at least 5 halcyon teams out there with different deliveries at the time. Most of the boats went through unscathed. It could have been luck, but some of the other boats knowingly tried to avoid it. They typically tacked at 50, 60 degrees away from the course that they wanted in order that they would run out 100 miles away from the area. It was clearly staying well away from the area. And I mean, avoidance is always the best action, isn't it? Just avoidance, you can't want for anything better. If you can manage to avoid them, you're clearly not going to have a problem. Yeah?
So I guess the best suggestion is find out where they are and make sure that you don't go anywhere near that for the time being. It's the safest bet, and what is probably the kindest to them as well.
Correct, absolutely. You couldn't say anything more than that, really, could you? Yeah.
No, because I mean, they're harming themselves. If they're going away with, the color of the boat, the hull on their head, they're obviously getting injured themselves. And there's obviously something very wrong for them to put themselves in that position. We're really glad that you're back on land and back home. I'm not sure if you've got another delivery coming up shortly, or if you're just taking a break.
Yeah, no, I got a call while I was still in Santiago, and Justin, are you free later this week? So it's like that. With the halcyon are really busy. They got a lot of work on, and they like their good crews to be available, basically.
Great. Well, at least you're safe. If you could send us some of the that footage, that would be great. We'd love to release that here on Yachting International Radio, because I think a lot of people are very interested, and to show to those doubters out there exactly what it is that you experienced. And I encourage those out there that have watched this, that still are doubters. It's not the first time. It has been happening since the beginning of July. I do a bit of research. The internet is an amazing, vast thing that has a ton of information available at your fingertips. If you even enter in Orca attacks, there's a whole list of things that are coming up right now out of the Strait of Gibraltar. So thank you again, Justin, and please do stay in touch and let us know your next adventure.
Yes, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Once again, you've been watching another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. Tune in again for another episode.